Okay. Would you please present the agenda?
Absolutely. Do you see my screen?
I do.
Okay.
I think I do. No, I don't. Hold on. Where are you?
Does everyone else see my screen?
Yes, there you are. You're back.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. The agenda has been presented to you for you now for your action. And I have a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda for today. Tanisha Aldridge.
Is there a second?
Second, Deborah Harris.
Okay. All those in favor, please signify by using the raised hand sign at the top of your screen. Molly, do we have an approval?
Yes.
All right. Motion carries and has been approved. Our first order of business is to basically welcome those who are present today and to lay out the purpose of this session. We want basically, and the screen speaks to it, we want to allow for greater public participation in our process. During this input session, we will summarize the committee's work third quarter, analyze findings to dates, discuss what can be expected in the fourth quarter, and of course, allow the opportunity for any member of the public who wishes to comment. May I ask, because I can't see all screens, is Leslie with us today?
She is not, sir.
Okay. Let me proceed then by just sharing with you a little background on what took place during the past quarter. First meeting of the second quarter was held on April 16th, and we were pleased to have officials from the Calvert County Health Department, including the new director who was supported by Denise Dickerson. They shared with us these 3 bullet points. There has been a notable increase in depression and suicidal thoughts reported among female students in particular. That has prompted the development of a targeted school-based initiative for early identification and intervention. Currently, there are 13 to 14 therapists serving the Calvert County public school system, with some therapists covering multiple schools and carrying large caseloads. We need to really look at what we're doing at the elementary school level. Despite awareness, we still are challenged by vaping, and it seems that our young people have greater access to vaping products than permitted by law, and there is a concern that we need to have stronger enforcement of policies. And currently, the health department is carrying out a vaping awareness program. Second meeting was held on the 21st of May, and we were really fortunate. The committee was able to finalize the community survey, and let me give my first plug of the evening. If you know of anyone who has not gotten the survey or has not completed it, we encourage you, your neighbors, and anyone who's interested to complete the survey. In our initial launch, we were getting very positive and strong feedback from the public. We'd like even stronger. So don't miss an opportunity to be a part of this public input session. We had Sergeant Hunt, Sergeant Wolford, and Mr. Larry Titus, former Trooper Titus of the Calvert County Public Schools, to make a joint presentation. This was our law enforcement presentation. The presenters discussed the coordination between law enforcement and schools, as well as the procedures for handling student disciplinary actions involving law enforcement. Many members raised concerns with gap in staffing levels at the student resource officer level, especially in the elementary schools. And also the committee raised concerns with with the alternative education program, which may be under-resourced and overcrowded. The third meeting dealt with a presentation as we looked at, as we received information from the local care team, Ms. Odoms of local care team, our state's attorney and his assistant, as well as Justin Saucer from the magistrate's office. In addition to that, we also introduced the committee to the data assessment report, which will be a part of what we deal with as we move forward. Key points to take away from those presentations: the new juvenile laws restrict intervention options, limiting schools, courts, and their ability to address non-criminal behavior. Legal interventions have limited tools to address behavior without clear abuse or criminal actions, signaling a need for more effective early intervention. The short of the long is this: Maryland's law has radically changed the way that criminalization of young folks is looked upon. Matter of fact, no one can be arrested under the age of 10. There are limited actions for those between 10 and 14 that can take place. And so the community needs to be not only educated, but reinformed about the restrictions. The key codicil on this is that the Department of Juvenile Services is really the bulwark in this whole process of what to do with young people who are involved in less than acceptable behavior. Because of administrative changes and actions by the governor, our local representative was not able to present, although she had indicated a willingness to share, and we are hopeful that before this process is over with, we get a fuller understanding about how that office interacts with us. I will now turn it over for subcommittee analysis.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Emily Shreves. I'm the staff liaison to the Student Safety and Wellbeing Advisory Committee. Tonight, I'll be presenting the subcommittee analysis for our supporting CCPS staff and contractors subcommittee on their behalf. So this group's findings in Q3 felt like the presentations in this quarter were some of the best in terms of the data that was provided in order for them to have a better understanding of how support for CCPS staff and contractors, fits in with student safety and well-being. Their findings, or their major findings for this quarter, was that there's still a large issue with vaping when it comes to in schools. This is supported by one of the presentations provided by the health department. Additionally, they highlighted that the Prosper app, which is an app that is used by the schools to assess student kind of moods and emotions and mental health, they feel like that is a very valuable resource and that could potentially be used to assess kind of the mental health of staff as well. So they're wondering if a similar application could be used for that purpose. And finally, their last major finding was that they're interested in a potential position that Mr. Larry Titus, who's with the school system, mentioned, that, obviously if they had a dream budget, what would a position that they would want to see would be? And that would be a safety advocate at the level of the elementary schools. So this is their findings. Their preliminary recommendations kind of tie in hand with their findings. So their first recommendation, preliminary recommendation, would be to add more student education onto vaping, to consider apps like Prosper and its accessibility for staff and students, and to consider a follow-up with the school system, in particularly Mr. Larry Titus, on that school advocate or safety advocate position that he mentioned for elementary level. This group feels that they could use more research on specific and direct data from staff and contractors in CPS about student safety and wellness, and they believe that they will obtain this data from our community survey that's currently out. They are looking for more specific training that's needed for staff to address student safety and wellness, so de-escalation, crisis response, etc. They are interested in potential positions that are vacant that support student safety and wellness directly, and this includes psychologists, social workers, and I know a lot of those positions were inquired about at the last quarter, specifically with a school psychologist and mental health supports. And finally, they're interested in data and information on levels of discipline and what disciplinary actions are used for specific behaviors to ensure that there's a consistency in response and processes when it comes to dealing with certain behavior. And that is what this group submitted. So I will pass this along to the Family and Community Engagement Subcommittee to present their findings.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Denise Dickerson. I'll be presenting on behalf of the Family and Community Engagement Subcommittee. Our subcommittee consists of myself, Deborah Harris, Rick Carrick, and Jennifer Moreland. And I'll ask for their assistance because I wasn't at all of the presentations. But the significant findings that we discussed that we felt were relevant to our subcommittee, most particularly, truancy has been a consistent conversation piece on our subcommittee. So the presentation, I believe, with the state's attorney's office and the judicial panel discussed that communication's been improved with regards to reporting truancy and working to resolve the circumstances surrounding that. So that was something that we were excited to see because obviously anything that can kind of help families and communities engage in improving the attendance of children is going to be a significant improvement and issue. The increased risk factors for female youth was something that was incredibly troubling from the presentation from the health department. And this was kind of across the board for both physical and mental health concerns that they had elevated needs and risk factors for female youth. Additionally, kind of across multiple presentations, there's significant delays in placement for mental health and or substance use treatment. This came up most notably in the presentation on the judicial panel from Ms. Odom talking about the LCT committee, as well as from the magistrate's office discussing just how sometimes the need for services isn't readily available. So there's a delay for youth to get access. And then finally, which may contribute to that point, is the overall workforce shortage for behavioral health providers. Next slide. Some of our preliminary recommendations. So one of the things that we've continued to talk about is just the consistent engagement with the community. So one of those things is for law enforcement to improve upon that engagement piece, to build relationships specifically with children and youth. We've seen some really great things happening within the schools and love to see that expand out into the community. Looking at additional restorative justice practices and opportunities so that we can engage youth and use them as subject matter experts, whether that's engaging them as members of committees, using them as, I forget what we called it, but there's a teen court, but other practices that engage youth and get their perspectives. And then again, looking at formal county-wide school-based mentoring programs. I think one of the things that we'll ask to look at later is some data related to outcomes related to mentoring, but also doing this as a county-wide initiative. A lot of programs seem to be implemented school by school, so we would like to see some county-wide initiatives that allow for opportunities and accessibility across the board. So additional research, again, truancy, looking at the contributing factors and what are ways that we can try to reduce some of those risk factors, and how can we support those families and children that are affected by it. The risk assessment and what that life cycle looks like. And what we're looking at there is when children are demonstrating risky behaviors, are there opportunities for diversion, or are there gaps in services in order to help alleviate any types of risks or danger to themselves or others. Nutrition and food insecurities. This came up as a question just for overall children who may be subject to food insecurity or nutrition issues that can cause an issue with just overall education. So what type of education information are families and children receiving with regards to that? What types of evidence-based practices are used for those that are justice involved? That's something that we'd love to hear from the Department of Juvenile Services to know what kind of practices or diversion techniques are being used, and then what outcome data, again, is related to the mentorship programs.
And we'll do the subcommittee analysis for the Safe and Supportive Environment Subcommittee. Leslie, are you able to present?
I sure am. All right, good evening, everybody. So, one of the things that we kind of have been focusing on were the numbers that we got from not only Julie Machino, but also Cecilia Lewis of CCPS about the FARMS data, the free and reduced meal students, that they have a lower attendance rate at 89% than all students combined, which was at 91%. Also, our economically disadvantaged students have a 45.5% rate of chronic absenteeism across all levels when compared to students with disabilities, which were at 26.9. And then we also could compare that to our English language learners, which were at 37.2%. Celia Lewis also shared some panorama data that showed only 55% of students across the system feel confident with their ability to regulate their emotions. Sergeant Kimmery Hunt shared data that showed male juveniles make up 57% of serious juvenile interactions, while 55% of those juveniles are white, compared to 31% Black and 8% Hispanic. The state's attorney, their office shared that Calvert County has one of the lowest rates of juveniles detained or charged as an adult in the state, as well as new legislation and who can be charged for what kind of crime. So we just kind of listed there the ages and kind of the guidelines that go along with that age group. So those were the things that we thought were most important when it came to the presentation. So some recommendations that we are talking about, again, as we've already heard, attendance or truancy is a concern not only in Calvert County, but also across the entire country. We see possibly a more standardized, consistent process in the Code of Conduct to assist families with students that are chronic absenteeism from school. To get some assistance with that at the school level by administrators who know the families. So I think having some more input from the actual principals when it comes to calling those families, letting them know where they're at, asking for conferences, that kind of thing, I think is probably where the biggest bang for our buck can be. Next, the emotional regulation piece from the panorama data. This is a concern across the entire county, especially for our male students. So social emotional lessons should be targeting that skill in possibly our in-school interventions, especially for male students who make up 57% of our juvenile offenders. So if we have kids that are sitting in ISI, what are they doing? Are they receiving any type of instruction? Are they working on packets? Are they just doing busy work? This could be an opportunity for us to try to get some of those lessons to help with emotional regulation, which could benefit further on down the line. And then possibly a mandatory class or a community service for students who are referred for bullying in schools after the first referral. We can't really do zero tolerance, but I think that it is something that we could do to make sure that parents and families understand that we do take bullying seriously. So having something put into place after the first time, as long as an investigation has been thoroughly made in the school system and bullying has been found to happen. So helping with maybe building empathy or giving back to the community. Just trying to put a positive spin in some way, shape, or form, and figuring out why students are bullying, because most research shows that students that bully are probably looking for attention for one reason or another. So trying to get down to the root of that and provide them with an opportunity to do something good and to maybe feel good about themselves might be a way to handle those that we find bullying. And then any information that we are still kind of looking at, how can we educate and build capacity of parents or guardians or families to work together with the school system and community members for the betterment of our challenges in our schools? So just trying to make sure that everybody understands how things work, why they work that way, why law, or where the law comes from and how it plays a part in our code of conduct, which is the next point, just making sure that families understand what that is. I'm not sure how we get that information to families better. Besides, maybe, I don't know, at open house, there's so much that has to take place. But maybe it's worth providing an opportunity for parents to really sit down with that, take a look at it, and especially the parts that come to discipline and attendance. And then how do we get all of our county agencies and groups to work together to resolve issues and increase the well-being of our students and families? We talked about this at one point. Maybe trying to find some type of central hub for resources so that when families do need something, that they can go to this spot and then kind of meander and find their way to resources that they might be needing to benefit their families. And I think that's about it.
Good afternoon. I am Sinitra Bowdry. And Dr. Marcus Newsom. We are the subcommittee on empowering positive student behavior. Our findings were, we looked at gaps in policy and clarity. We looked at the student voice and equity-focused discipline. We listened to those areas. We listened to the areas on inconsistent use of trauma-informed and restorative practices. We looked at the insufficient data tracking disaggregated by race and disability and other factors. And we went straight to our findings. And we saw that there was a limited staff capacity of family engagement and wellness integration. Next slide. Straight into there. Our preliminary you'll see this word MTSS, which is a multi-tiered support system. We are suggesting that we adopt a district-wide multi-tiered support system framework with neuroscience and whole child focus, and that is acknowledging those kids who have neurodiverse difficulties, meaning that they don't think like the average person. So having a framework that is adopted district-wide instead of kind of putting one in every school and everyone says this is what it looks like, create something where the entire school has some system in place. Revise the student code of conduct to include age-appropriate restorative language. which has been said throughout, expand family partnerships, and pilot innovations with evidence-based models. Areas needing additional research. There's definitely a need in training behavioral health for elementary age children and their families, especially for students with diagnosed disabilities. We need to clarify the framework and resources. How will CCPS ensure that there's consistent implementation for those neuroscience aligned children? So those are children who have neurodiverse brains, for that whole child behavior framework across all schools. What dedicated resources, such as funding and staffing and training, will it support? How do we elevate student and family voices? What additional student and family feedback is needed to confirm that these behaviors and supports are equitable and they're developmentally appropriate before finalizing these recommendations? We also recommend that additional research is done on the revised student code of conduct. Our group can focus on recommending updates to the code of conduct to include age-appropriate, student-friendly, and restorative language that empowers the student and promotes positive behavior.
Good evening, everybody. For the modern facilities and resources, this last quarter, we were able to review the policy procedures of the school system, the FY21 through FY25 budgets, and the FY21 through FY25 Maryland Center for School Safety grants that are available. The School Safety Fund Grant, School Safety Grant Program, and the SRO Agri Coverage Grant. These are the three that the county does take advantage of. Policy procedures, I can tell you, looking at Calvert counties and also looking at Baltimore City and a few others, Calvert County's policy procedures align with a majority of what I've been able to see throughout the state. The budget review, Calvert County is not alone when it comes to what I'm getting ready to explain. There was only one line item in the budget, and that was in the capital budget that was labeled as school safety. Everything else, when the grants come in and funding comes in, is kind of mixed around here and there with whatever label is most applicable to it, which makes it hard to understand how much is being used in school safety. Again, Calvert County is not alone in that. I've looked at several other different budgets across the state, and they're all basically the same way. There is no line item in the operating budget. And so again, everything is between personnel and other things. I know they're taking advantage of the grants that we provide, and I know that they're in there, but it's kind of hard for myself or a lay person to come in and see this is what we're seeing and this is where our money is being spent. Grant fund use from our office is all their use of their grants within the guidelines published by Maryland Center for School Safety in the yearly notice of availability for grants. One thing we did find was repetition on 2 different years' grants. It was a copy and paste basically, but it was a different named school that it was a grant was supposed to be used for. In reality, we did a quick desk audit. They passed right away and they came up with the correct paperwork, and they apologized for it. One year it had 3 schools listed. The second year for the same type of camera upgrades, it had the same 3 schools again. But when they brought the paperwork out, it was 3 different schools. So it was just a copy and paste mistake somebody made. I can understand as busy as people are. Next one, please. And we still need to sit down and interview Mr. Titus, their facilities manager, and their budget staff to see the possibility of what it will take to maybe add line items in the budget to make it more user friendly or parent friendly, coming from the outside to look at the budget.
Okay, this brings us to the point that we want to talk a little bit about what we are anticipating as our next steps. So our preview is as follows. The committees will have a data assessment reporting working session during a July meeting to discuss all data, policies, and presentations brought before the committee today, and to begin to collectively identify challenges and gaps. As you've seen tonight, there has been some overlap in committees recommendations, and so we hope to be able to create some synergy around what we mean and what we'd like to see more of. The committee will invite student groups for testimony and feedback. Staff will provide a presentation on the community survey findings, and the committee will have an additional work session to review and refine a draft of the final report. That is it for our presentation this evening, and now we're open for public comment.
If you are joining us via Microsoft Teams and you have public comment you'd like to share, please use the raise your hand function now. Mr. Chair, there's no one online for public comment.
That said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Rick Pierre, I'll second.
All right. Could you please vote again by raising your hand so that Emily has an appropriate record?
It is recorded. Thank you.
All right. Having recorded that, then this meeting is adjourned with just the reminders of what's on the screen currently. I remind folks to take the survey again. This is my second plug for the survey. We need community feedback. It's obvious that we're not going to get it through this vehicle, and so we need persons to respond on the survey. Our next regular meeting is the 16th at 2 p.m. at the Brown Center. Look forward to seeing all of you. And with that, thank you for your participation. And again, good night.